What happens when the most feared man in the city, a Mafia boss known as the Trident, sees something he shouldn't? He notices the new maid, the one who is silent as a shadow, the one who flinches if you even look at her. He sees the scars she keeps hidden beneath her cheap uniform. They aren't accidental. They're a signature, a brand of ownership from a monster far more public than he is. Any other man would have fired her. But Marcus Bianco isn't any other man. And what he did next didn't just break the rules, it left his most bitter enemies utterly speechless. The penthouse of Marcus Bianco was less a home and more a fortress of glass and steel, suspended 50 stories above the city. It was a sterile, silent world, governed by rules as rigid and cold as the marble floors. The staff, all 20 of them, understood this. They were paid 3 times the normal rate to be invisible, efficient, and above all, silent. Among them, Serafina Hayes was the newest and the most invisible. She was a ghost in a grey uniform, her pale hair pulled back so tightly it erased her features. In the 3 weeks she had worked for Mr. Bianco, she had never seen his face for more than a fleeting second. She'd only heard his voice, a low baritone that vibrated with impatient authority, twice. Once, ordering coffee. The second time, dismissing his chief of security, Leo Gravano, with a curt, "Handle it." Serafina preferred it this way. Anonymity was her armor. She had come to this city running from a past that felt like it was breathing down her neck, and she'd sought employment in the one place she believed her hunter would never dare to tread. The Lion's Den, the fortress of Marcus the Trident Bianco. Marcus Bianco ran the city's shadows with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a shark. His legitimate businesses, global shipping, high-end construction, were merely the visible tip of an iceberg that sank deep into the underworld. He was a man of lethal routine. He ate the same breakfast at 7 a.m., took his meetings at 10:04 a.m., and reviewed his ledgers in his study at 8:00 p.m. It was during this 8:00 p.m. ritual that the invisible world and the world of power collided. Serafina was tasked with the light dusting of the study while he worked. This was the most dreaded job. He never acknowledged the staff, but his presence was a physical weight in the room. He sat at his massive oak desk, a single green-shaded lamp illuminating the papers before him, leaving his face in shadow. Serafina moved with practiced silence. She dusted the shelves, her hands shaking so slightly it was imperceptible. The shelves were filled with first-edition classics and, curiously, books on ancient military strategy. She was reaching for the top of a tall shelf, standing on the library's rolling ladder, when the rung beneath her foot gave a sickening crack. She wasn't used to cheap, faulty equipment. She was used to... well, she wasn't used to this. Serafina lost her balance, lurching forward. She didn't scream. She hadn't made a sound in years that wasn't required of her. She crashed against the shelf, sending a heavy copy of The Art of War tumbling down. She twisted to catch it, a desperate, clumsy movement. The book hit the floor with a hollow thud. Silence. The only sound in the room was Serafina's frantic, shallow breathing. "Get out," Marcus Bianco said, his voice flat, not even looking up. "Yes, Mr. Bianco. I'm so sorry, sir. She fumbled, grabbing the book, her body burning with shame and terror. She would be fired, thrown out, and he would find her. The panic made her clumsy. As she bent to place the book on the table, the top 3 buttons of her stiff uniform, stressed by the fall, tore open. The cheap fabric gaped, exposing her collarbone and the top of her shoulder. She didn't notice. But he did. Marcus Bianco had finally looked up, his eyes, the color of dark ice, narrowing in annoyance. But the annoyance vanished, replaced by a stillness that was 1,000 times more terrifying. He wasn't looking at her face. He was staring at her skin. There, just below her collarbone, was a scar. It wasn't a jagged line from an accident. It was a brand, precise, deliberate, and hideously intricate, a stylized Gothic T woven into a pattern of thorns. Serafina saw where his eyes were locked. A cold dread, sharper than any fear he could normally inspire, seized her. She fumbled with the torn uniform, pulling the fabric together, her face draining of all color. I apologize, sir. It won't happen again. She backed away, her movements jerky, like a frightened animal. She practically ran from the room, the heavy oak door clicking shut behind her. Marcus Bianco did not move for a full minute. He stared at the spot where she had been. He had seen violence. He had inflicted it. He knew the language of scars. He knew the clumsy work of a street knife, the precise line of a surgical blade, the puckered mark of a bullet. He had never, in his entire life, seen anything like that. It was not a warning. It was a signature, a mark of ownership. The most feared man in the city picked up his phone. His right-hand man, Leo Gravano, answered on the first ring. "Leo," Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet. "The new maid. The one named Serafina Hayes. I want to know everything. Who she is, where she came from, and who gave her that scar." Leo Gravano was a man who specialized in finding the unfindable. He was Marcus Bianco's shadow, a man with a bland face and a mind like a steel trap. But this assignment was different. "Serafina Hayes," he reported to Marcus 24 hours later, "doesn't exist." They were in the penthouse study. Marcus was standing by the window, looking down at the city lights. He didn't turn. "Explain." "On paper, she's perfect," Leo said, flipping through a thin file. "Social security number issued 5 years ago. Driver's license from a small town in Oregon. A rental history in 2 different states. All of it clean." "But," Marcus asked, "it's too clean. It's a ghost profile. The social security number was issued to a woman who died in 1978. The addresses are mail drops. The references are burner phones. She was paid in cash at her last 2 jobs. She's been living off the grid, and she's been running hard." Marcus turned. "The scar. What did you find?" Leo hesitated. This was the part that chilled him. "I sent a discreet photo of the design to a few specialists, an old-world tattooist in Sicily, an information broker in Berlin. I got 1 hit. It's not a Mafia mark. It's not cartel. It's personal. The name, Leo. Richard Thorne." The name landed in the room like a grenade. Marcus's expression didn't change, but a muscle in his jaw tightened. Richard Thorne was not Mafia. He was, in many ways, worse. He was a new money royalty, a billionaire financier whose company, Thorne Global, had a stake in half the city. He sat on charity boards with names like Rockefeller and was rumored to be the kingmaker behind the new mayor. He was publicly untouchable, a man who smiled on magazine covers and attended galas. In the shadows, however, on the same dark web that Leo trawled, Thorne was known for something else. He was a collector, of art, of companies, and of people. He was a man with depraved tastes and the resources to indulge them without consequence. "Thorne," Marcus said, the name tasting like acid. "He's not our world. He stays with the politicians and the bankers." "Apparently," Leo said quietly. "He doesn't. The rumors are dark, Marcus. Very dark. This T brand. It's what he does to the ones he thinks he owns. The ones who escape," Marcus finished. He was silent. The Petrovich Syndicate, his main rivals, He understood. They wanted territory. They wanted money. They operated by a code, however brutal. This was different. This was filth. And this filth had touched someone living under his roof, sleeping in his fortress. "She's been here 3 weeks," Marcus mused. "Why here? Why my house?" "A ghost looking for the biggest shadow to hide in," Leo suggested. "Who would ever look for a broken bird in the trident's nest? She'd be safer here than anywhere. Unless he found out." "He has found out," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. This accident yesterday, it wasn't an accident. Leo looked confused. "The ladder? She's been here 3 weeks, meticulous, silent, perfect. Then suddenly, she breaks a ladder and tears her own uniform?" "No." Marcus walked to the spot where she had fallen. "She was desperate. She knew she'd been made. She was trying to get me to see it. It was a gamble, a desperate, last-second plea for help from the only person in the city more dangerous than the man hunting her." "What are your orders?" Leo asked. "We can give her cash, a new identity. Send her to Milan." "No." Marcus's voice was final. "He's hunting on my territory. He's marked someone in my home. He's made it my business." He looked at Leo, his eyes cold. "Double the security on every floor. Lock down the elevators. No one enters or leaves this building without your personal clearance. And bring Serafina Hayes to me. It's time she and I had a real conversation." The penthouse was silent, but it was a new kind of silence. It was the charged, heavy quiet of a fortress preparing for a siege. Every vent, every doorway, every elevator now had a discreet, armed guard. Serafina was escorted to the study not by a fellow maid, but by Leo Gravano himself. She was trembling, believing this was the end. She was being handed over. When she entered, Marcus Bianco was standing exactly where he had been the night before, by the window. He had dismissed the rest of the staff for the night. It was just the 3 of them. "Mr. Bianco," she began, her voice a reedy whisper. I can leave. I never meant to bring." "Sit," he commanded. She sat on the edge of a leather chair, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. "Your name is not Serafina Hayes," Marcus stated. She flinched, a small, violent tremor. "No." "What is your real name?" "It doesn't matter," she whispered, tears welling. "It's a name he owns." "He doesn't own anything in this building," Marcus said, his voice cutting. "He knows you're here. You knew he knew. That's why you staged that fall. You wanted me to see his mark." Serafina's composure shattered. The tears she had held back for years began to fall. "I didn't know where else to go. I've been running for 2 years. I change cities. I change my hair. I change my name. And he always finds me. He has people everywhere. Police. Private investigators. He enjoys the hunt." "Tell me," Marcus said. And so the story spilled out. Her real name was Alina. She had been a musician, a cellist recruited to play at one of Richard Thorne's lavish parties. He had taken an interest in her, offered her patronage. It was a golden dream that quickly became a gilded cage. He wasn't a lover. He was a master. He isolated her, took her phone, her passport, her identity. He told her she was his finest acquisition. She was one of several, kept in a penthouse far more opulent and terrifying than this one. "The scars," she choked, instinctively touching her collarbone. He calls it his patron's mark, a sign of his generosity. He did it. He did it while he made the others watch, to show them what happened if they tried to run. She had run. A sympathetic driver, a moment of distraction. She had slipped out with nothing but the clothes on her back, and $10,000 she had managed to steal. For 2 years, she had been a ghost. "I saw a news report last week," she whispered, shaking. "He was at a city planning meeting. He's here. I knew it was only a matter of days. I saw this job. I thought he's a billionaire. You're you. You're rivals, aren't you? I thought he would never, ever step foot on your property. I thought it was the one place I could be invisible." "You were wrong," Marcus said. "He's been making inquiries. A man matching his description was seen across the street, watching this building." Serafina let out a sound, a pure, hopeless sob. "Then it's over. Please, just don't let him take me. I'd rather die." Marcus watched her. He saw the raw terror. He saw the brand that defiled his sense of order. Richard Thorne was a man who believed money and public status made him a god, free to poach and brand and discard. "Leo," Marcus said. Leo stepped forward. "You will escort Ms. Hayes, a liner, to the master guest suite on the 48th floor. She is not to leave it. 2 of my best men are to be posted outside her door. She is not to be referred to as staff. She is my guest." Alina looked up, her tear-streaked face a mask of confusion. "Guest? I don't understand." Marcus walked from the window, stopping directly in front of her. He was close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. He didn't look at her with pity, which she was grateful for. He looked at her with something far more potent: resolve. "You are correct, Alina. He and I are not in the same business. But he has made a critical error in judgment. He has come onto my territory, to claim someone who is now under my roof." He tilted his head. "You are no longer running. He is." "You can't," she breathed, horrified. "You don't know him. He's not like your rivals. He doesn't use guns. He uses senators. He uses judges. He will ruin you in the press. He's legitimate." A cold, thin smile touched Marcus Bianco's lips for the first time. It was a terrifying sight. "Good," he said. "He'll never see me coming." The next 3 days were a blur of silent, intense activity. The Bianco penthouse became a war room. Marcus didn't leave. He brought in his top people, not the muscle, but the brains. He brought in Wraith, a cybersecurity specialist who looked more like a college student, but who could crack a government mainframe in an hour. He brought in his chief financial officer, a woman who knew where every dark dollar in the city was laundered, and he brought in Leo, his strategist. Alina, now in the luxurious guest suite, felt like a princess in a tower. She was safe, but she was a prisoner. She watched the news, expecting to see Marcus Bianco's name dragged through the mud. Nothing. Meanwhile, Richard Thorne was getting impatient. His surveillance had confirmed his property was inside Bianco's building. He found this amusing. The brutish Mafia boss, hiding his prize. Thorne decided to make a power play. He didn't send thugs. He sent a lawyer. The lawyer, a man in a $10,000 suit, was met by Leo in the lobby. "Mr. Thorne sends his compliments," the lawyer said, holding a briefcase. "He is aware Mr. Bianco is in possession of a personal item of his. A runaway employee. He is prepared to offer $100,000 for her immediate and discreet return. No questions asked." Leo stared at the man, his bland face unreadable. "Mr. Bianco has no idea what you're talking about." "Please don't be obtuse," the lawyer sneered. "We know she's here. If she is not returned within 24 hours, Mr. Thorne will be forced to take escalating measures. He has many friends. Friends at the SEC, friends in the IRS, friends at the Times. It would be a shame if Mr. Bianco's legitimate shipping interests suddenly came under federal review. Leo smiled. Is that all? Consider this a courtesy, Mr. Gravano. Don't make an enemy of Richard Thorne. You play in the mud. He plays on the board. Leo motioned to the guards. See him out. When Leo reported the threat to Marcus, the boss was in his study, looking at a complex diagram Wraith had projected onto the wall. It was a map of Thorne's digital empire. He's threatening us with an audit, Leo said, disgusted. Of course he is, Marcus said, not looking up. It's what he knows. He thinks we're idiots with guns. He pointed to a node on the map. Wraith, that server, the one in the Caymans. I want it. It's encrypted to hell and back, boss, Wraith said, fingers flying, but give me an hour. Alina, Marcus said, turning to Leo. I need her to confirm something. Does Thorne have a gala, an annual event? Leo nodded. Yes. The City Founders Charity Ball. It's his pet project. He's the chairman. It's tomorrow night, the biggest social event of the year. Good, Marcus said. Call my tailor. Have him meet Alina. I need her fitted for a gown, something magnificent. And red. Leo paused. You can't be thinking of taking her there. Marcus, that's not a fight. That's a declaration of war, on his home turf. Exactly, Marcus said, as Wraith suddenly cheered. I'm in, Wraith announced. I'm in the Cayman server. Oh my. Oh, this guy is a pig. It's all here. The offshore accounts, the blackmail files, the real ledgers for the charity. He's skimming millions. Marcus looked at the data streaming onto the wall. He's threatening me with an audit, he said, his voice soft. He has no idea what a real audit looks like. He turned to Leo. Tell the tailor, red, and find me the best jeweler in this city. I want her dripping in diamonds. If Thorne wants to play on the board, we'll show him what a king looks like. The City Founders Charity Ball was the apex of New York society. It was held in the grand ballroom of the City Museum, a cavernous space of marble and gold. Men whose ancestors were names like Vanderbilt and Astor mingled with tech billionaires and senators. And at the center of it all, holding court like a modern-day king, was Richard Thorne. He was smug. He had heard Bianco had refused his offer. A foolish, proud move from a common criminal. Thorne was already making the calls to have Bianco's shipping containers indefinitely delayed at the port, to have his bank accounts frozen. It was a simple matter of pest control. Then, at 9 p.m., the grand doors of the ballroom opened. A murmur rippled through the crowd, which then turned into a stunned, collective silence. Marcus the Trident Bianco had arrived. He never came to these events. He despised the legitimate elite. But it wasn't his presence that caused the intake of breath. It was the woman on his arm. She was unrecognizable. Her pale hair was styled in soft waves, cascading down her back. She wore a custom-made gown of deep, blood-red silk that seemed to flow like liquid around her. Around her throat was a necklace of brilliant cut diamonds that a queen would envy. But it was her face that shocked them. She was terrified. Her hand was gripping Marcus's arm. But she was not bowed. Her chin was up. Her eyes were clear. It was Serafina. It was Alina. She had fought Marcus, begged him not to make her go. He'll see me. He'll kill you. He will see you, Marcus had replied, as he personally fastened the diamond clasp. And he will see that you are with me. You will not hide. Not anymore. Now, as they walked into the ballroom, the sea of black tuxedos and designer gowns parted for them. Marcus walked as if he owned the building, his eyes locked forward. Richard Thorne saw them. His wine glass, halfway to his lips, froze. His face, usually a mask of pleasant charm, contorted in a flash of pure, narcissistic rage. This was not just defiance. This was an insult of the highest order. Bianco was parading his stolen property in front of his world. Thorne set his glass down and began to walk toward them, his security detail moving with him. The music in the ballroom seemed to fade. "Bianco," Thorne hissed, stopping a few feet away. His eyes were not on Marcus. They were devouring Alina, his gaze filled with a terrifying promise of pain. "You are a very, very stupid man. You have something that belongs to me." Alina flinched, instinctively trying to cover the scar that the dress's elegant neckline didn't hide. But Marcus's hand found hers, not to hide it, but to hold it firmly at his side. Marcus Bianco looked Richard Thorne in the eye. He was a full head taller than the financier. "I have nothing that belongs to you, Thorne," Marcus said, his voice a low rumble that cut through the silence. "I am here with my guest, Alina." He said her real name, loudly. Thorne's face purpled. "She is my employee. She stole from me. I am here to reclaim my property." "She is not property," Marcus said. "She is a guest of the Bianco family, and she is under my protection, permanently." A collective gasp went up. This was a public declaration. Thorne laughed, a high, ugly sound. "Protection? You? A gutter rat who got lucky? You're protecting staff? You think your goons can touch me?" He gestured to the room. "These are my friends, the mayor, the police commissioner. You are nothing here." "You're right," Marcus said, nodding slowly. "My goons can't touch you. You've insulated yourself perfectly from men like me." He leaned in, so only Thorne could hear. "But you're not insulated from men like you. You threatened me with an audit, so I performed one. While you were sipping champagne, my associate, Wraith, downloaded the entire contents of your Cayman server." Thorne's blood ran cold. The smile vanished. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Marcus said, his voice a whisper. "I have the real ledgers for this very gala, the $5 million you skimmed. I have the blackmail file on Senator Hayes. I have the wire transfer records of your purchases from that collector in Eastern Europe. I have every single thing you've ever hidden." Thorne was white as a sheet. What do you want? Money? Name your price." Marcus smiled, that cold, thin smile. "I want you to understand something. You put your hands on her. You put your filth on someone who was in my home. You didn't just break her, you broke my rules. And as for what I want," Marcus straightened up, his voice ringing out for all to hear, "I want to watch you burn." He looked at Alina, who was staring at him, stunned. "Are you enjoying the party?" Before she could answer, 2 uniformed police officers, followed by 3 men in dark FBI windbreakers, entered the ballroom. They walked past the shocked socialites, past the mayor, and stopped directly in front of Richard Thorne. "Richard Thorne," the agent said, his voice flat, "you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and violations of the Federal Racketeer, Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act." Thorne looked at Marcus, his eyes wide with disbelief. You called the feds? On yourself?" Marcus just watched him, impassive. "You idiot!" Thorne screamed as they cuffed him. "You'll be next. They'll investigate you." "They will," Marcus said. "And they'll find a legitimate shipping magnate who just gave them the biggest white-collar criminal of the decade on a silver platter. They'll be giving me a medal." As they dragged a screaming, protesting Richard Thorne out of the ballroom, Marcus Bianco turned to the stunned crowd. He raised his glass. "A toast," he said, "to charity." The arrest was only the beginning. What Richard Thorne, and indeed the entire city, had failed to understand was that Marcus Bianco was a new kind of boss. He didn't rule with fear alone, he ruled with information. What Marcus did next was what left even his enemies, the battle-hardened Petrovich family, speechless. They had expected a war. They had expected car bombs, bloody ambushes, a brutal consolidation of power. When they heard Thorn had been arrested by the feds, they laughed. Bianco had invited the wolves into the city. He was finished. But the next morning, the real attack began. Marcus hadn't just given the FBI the information on Thorn. That was merely the opening shot. He had, in the span of 12 hours, systematically and brilliantly dismantled Richard Thorn's entire life, using Thorn's own weapons against him. At 8 a.m., a dossier was leaked to every major news outlet. It wasn't from a Bianco source. It was from a concerned whistleblower inside Thorn Global. It contained the irrefutable proof of Thorn's charity skimming. The very families he had mingled with, the Rockefellers, the Astors, the new tech giants, were publicly named as victims of his fraud. By 9 a.m., Thorn Global's stock had entered a freefall. At 10 a.m., the blackmail file on Senator Hayes was anonymously delivered, not to the press, but to the senator's political rival, a bulldog congresswoman known for her ambition. By 10:30 a.m., she was on the steps of the Capitol, demanding a full ethics investigation into Thorn's lobbying and the senator's corrupt dealings. Thorn's political umbrella vanished in an instant. At noon, Wraith activated the final payload. He leaked Thorn's private ledgers. But he didn't leak them to the IRS. He leaked them to Thorn's wife and his mistress and his other mistress. Simultaneously, he leaked Thorn's private, disgusting messages about his friends on the charity board to the entire charity board. By 3 p.m., Richard Thorn was not just an arrested criminal, he was a social pariah. His wife had filed for divorce. His partners had invoked emergency clauses to oust him from his own company. The banks, seeing the RICO charge, had frozen every last one of his personal and corporate accounts. The head of the Petrovich family sat in his own dark office, watching the news reports. He had 3 sniper teams ready, expecting retaliation from Bianco for a recent skirmish. Instead, he was watching Bianco's enemy be legally and socially dismembered without a single shot fired. Marcus hadn't just killed his rival. He had erased him. He had made it so Richard Thorn had never mattered. He had used the legitimate world's own rules, the IRS, the SEC, the media, and social shame, as a weapon more devastating than 1,000 bullets. The Petrovich boss poured himself a drink. "Do not," he said to his son, "ever, ever make an enemy of that man. He is not a gangster. He is something else." Marcus Bianco had proven that he could destroy a man in the gutter, and he could destroy a man in a penthouse, all with the same chilling efficiency. The underworld was silent, not in fear of a war, but in awe of a massacre they hadn't even seen. The 2 days that followed the gala felt like a lifetime suspended in glass. The penthouse, which had been a fortress of war, returned to its state of sterile, heavy silence. The extra guards vanished. The war room was once again a billiards lounge. The city below was a firestorm of headlines, the Thorn collapse dominating every news cycle. But 50 stories up, there was only stillness. Alina was in the study. She had been drawn to the room, to the window where Marcus had stood when he'd made his decision. She had not been a guest or staff. She had been a piece on his chessboard. Now, the game was over. Thorn was in a federal holding cell, denied bail. His assets were frozen. His wife had filed for divorce. His world was ash. She was free. The words tasted like dust. What did free even mean? For 2 years, free had meant running, looking over her shoulder, sleeping in cheap motels with a chair jammed under the doorknob. Before that, free had meant being a Kellist, her fingers finding solace in the strings of a 19th-century Italian instrument. Thorn had taken that. He hadn't just scarred her body, he had broken her hands. Not literally, but he had broken her spirit. She hadn't touched an instrument since the day he first locked his penthouse door. The music had died, and the ghost, Serafina, had been born. Now, Alina stood in a new penthouse, a new cage, a gilded one, yes, but she was still a prisoner. She was a captive of the man who had saved her. She had no money, no identity that wasn't a fabrication, and no future. She had simply traded one master for another. A brutal, sadistic one for a cold, calculating one. The study door opened with a near-silent click. Marcus Bianco entered. He was not in the immaculate black suit he'd worn to the gala, nor the razor-sharp business attire of his workday. He was in a simple black cashmere sweater and dark trousers. He looked, for the first time since she'd met him, like a man, and not an icon of fear. He didn't speak, but walked to the expansive bar built into the wall. The sound of a heavy crystal decanter and the glug of amber liquid filled the silence. He poured 2 glasses of scotch, the ice cubes cracking as the alcohol hit them. He walked over to her, his footsteps muffled by the Persian rug. He handed her one of the glasses. His fingers brushed hers. She had expected his skin to be cold as ice. It was warm. She took the glass, her hand steady. It was a small victory, but it was hers. "It's over," she said. Her voice was husky, unused. It was not a question. "Yes," he confirmed, moving to stand beside her, both of them looking out at the city. "It's over." The silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with the things they weren't saying. Finally, she turned to face him. He was taller than she'd realized, and his presence was a physical weight. But the terror she'd once felt was gone, replaced by a deep, unsettling curiosity. "Why?" she asked, her voice soft but strong. She wouldn't be a ghost anymore. "Why would you do that for me? You risked everything. You brought the FBI to your own doorstep. The papers, they're calling you a whistleblower, a civic hero. But your rivals, the Petrovics, they won't see it that way. You've brought the feds into your world. You exposed your entire operation to scrutiny. For a maid." Marcus took a slow sip of his scotch, his eyes never leaving the skyline. "The FBI will be busy with Thorn's international accounts for a decade," he said, the same dismissive tone he'd used before. "My operations are insulated. You cannot audit a shadow. And the Petrovics," he almost smiled, "they are not angry. They are confused. They are animals who understand force. They just watched me take down a rival with a telephone. They are now more afraid of my accountant than they are of my soldiers. That is a tactical victory." "That's not an answer, Marcus," Alina insisted, her grip tightening on the glass. "That is a strategy. I want to know why." He turned to look at her then. His eyes, those dark, impossibly cold eyes, roamed her face, not with desire, but with an analyst's precision. He was reading her, calculating. "When I was 9 years old," he said, his voice a low rumble. "My father was still new in this city. He was small. He had a bakery. It was a front, but it was his. There was a man like Thorn, not Mafia. He was a city inspector. He wore a clean suit and had clean hands, and he liked to torment my father. He'd find violations. He'd demand money. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the power. He liked watching my father, a proud man, beg." Alina's breath caught. "One day," Marcus continued, his gaze becoming distant, "the inspector came in and saw my mother. He said my father's debt could be renegotiated. He put his clean hand on her arm. Marcus looked down at his own hand, clenching it slowly. My father did what he had to do. The inspector vanished, but the bakery was lost. The feds came. My father was gone for a long time. We lost everything because of a man who thought his legitimacy made him a god, who thought he could touch what wasn't his. He finally looked back at her, his eyes locking on hers. There are two types of evil, Alina. There is the evil that fights for power, for family, for territory, for respect. It is a war, and it has rules. Then there is the evil that poisons, the kind that enjoys the pain, the kind that breaks things just to watch them shatter. That is an offense to order. Thorn was filth. He disrespected my house. He underestimated me. He raised his free hand, but did not touch her. His fingers hovered over her collarbone, where the stylized T was hidden beneath her blouse. And he damaged something valuable, he finished, his voice soft. I always protect what is mine. The implication hung in the air, thick and heavy. Alina looked at the scar, and then back at him. The mark was still there. It would always be a part of her. But in his story, she suddenly understood his rage. It wasn't just for her. It was for his mother. It was for the 9-year-old boy who had lost everything. She realized the terror was gone, replaced by something else entirely. A connection, a dangerous, frightening understanding. And am I yours, Marcus? She whispered. Before he could answer, his phone, which had been silent on the bar, buzzed. A single, discreet text. Marcus glanced at it. The warmth, the vulnerability, the past. It all vanished. The mask of the trident snapped back into place. His jaw tightened, and his eyes went flat and cold. What is it? Alina asked, a new kind of dread creeping in. Leo, Marcus said, his voice clipped. He's in the lobby. Is something wrong? Stay here. Do not leave this room. He set his glass down and was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Alina stood alone, her heart hammering. The quiet of the penthouse suddenly felt menacing again. The game wasn't over. It was just a new board. She waited for what felt like an hour, but was likely only 10 minutes. The study door opened again. This time it was Leo Gravano, his face as bland and unreadable as ever. He was holding a large, flat box wrapped in brown paper. Ms. Alina, he said, his voice polite. A delivery was made to the front desk, addressed to the maid at Bianco Penthouse. Alina went cold. Mr. Bianco wanted you to see it, Leo said. He placed the box on the massive oak desk and, with a small knife, cut the twine. He lifted the lid. Alina let out a sound, a choked, strangled sob, and stumbled back. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, was a shattered piece of dark, aged wood. It was the neck and scroll of a cello, splintered and destroyed. Lying across it was a single, pristine white rose. Tucked into the velvet was a small, elegant card. Alina didn't need to read it. She knew the handwriting. It wasn't Thorn's. It was from a man named Dmitri Petrovich. The card read, "A beautiful bird. But a cage is still a cage. Some things stay broken." This was the test. The Petrovics, confused by Marcus's legitimate war, were now testing his boundaries. They weren't attacking him. They were attacking her. They were reminding Marcus that he had a weakness now, that by saving her, he had made her a target. They were mocking her brokenness and his protection. A fresh wave of terror washed over her. She would never be free. She was a liability, a piece of damaged goods that would get this man killed. "I have to leave," she whispered, backing toward the door. They're right. I'll bring them down on you. I have to go." Mr. Bianco anticipated this response, Leo said, his voice calm, cutting through her panic. "He asks that you wait. He is handling it." "Handling it?" Alina cried, her voice rising. "They're sending me parts of my past. They know who I am. They're going to kill me just to prove a point to him." "No," a new voice said. Marcus was standing in the doorway. He hadn't been gone for more than a minute. His face was a mask of cold fury. He walked past her and stared down at the broken cello, at the white rose. "They are not sending you a message, Alina," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "They are sending me one." "It's a threat," she choked out. "It is a miscalculation," Marcus corrected. He turned to her. The anger in his eyes was profound, but it wasn't at her. It was a controlled, Arctic rage. Thorn was a pig who needed to be slaughtered. The Petrovics, they are professionals, but they just made an amateur mistake. They confused a strategic asset with a liability. He picked up the white rose, twirling it in his fingers. "They think because I didn't use bullets on Thorn, I have forgotten how." He walked to his desk and hit an intercom. "Wraith, I need you." A moment later, the young, hoodie-wearing tech specialist appeared. "Boss?" Marcus gestured to the broken cello. "The Petrovics are feeling poetic. I want you to find their new shipping route, the one they are moving through the Bosphorus, the one they think is a ghost." Wraith's eyes lit up. "The Perseus line? Oh, that's not a ghost. That's a leaky faucet. I've been in their servers for a week. What do you need?" "I want you to contact the port authorities in Istanbul," Marcus said. "Use an anonymous encrypted line. Tell them a shipment of antiquities, specifically priceless, stolen Sumerian artifacts, is being smuggled on the Macedonia, set to dock in..." He glanced at his watch. 4 hours. Give them the exact container numbers." Wraith grinned. "There are no artifacts, boss." "There are now," Marcus said. "My associates in Istanbul are loading them as we speak. The Petrovics will be very surprised to learn they are in the smuggling business." "And the ship?" Wraith asked. "Will be seized, the crew arrested, the ship impounded indefinitely. The route will be burned, and their new partners in Ankara will be in a federal prison by morning. See to it." "Yes, boss," Wraith said, and vanished. Marcus turned back to Alina. She was staring at him, her mind reeling. He had just, in the span of 30 seconds, crippled his largest rival's new, multi-million-dollar venture. As a response to a broken piece of wood. He picked up the card from Dmitri Petrovich. "They wanted to remind me that some things stay broken." He then did something she never expected. He walked to the fireplace, a modern glass and steel installation, and with a click, a ribbon of blue flame appeared. He dropped the card and the rose into the fire. They watched it curl and blacken. "He's wrong," Marcus said, turning back to her. Alina was trembling, but not from fear. It was anger. A deep, cold anger she hadn't felt in years. The fear was finally, burning away. "They think I'm a broken toy," she said, her voice shaking with this new, raw emotion. Thorn. He took my music, and now they use it to mock me." "Yes," Marcus said. He saw the fire in her eyes, the shift from victim to survivor. It was the same look he'd seen in the mirror when he was a boy. "I am not a liability, Marcus," she said, stepping toward him. "No," he agreed. "You are not. I am not broken. No, you are forged." He walked back to his desk, but this time he opened a drawer. He pulled out not a weapon, not a file, but a simple, brand-new silver laptop. He placed it on the desk, near the box with the shattered cello. This is what they see, he said, gesturing to the box. A broken past, a weakness. He tapped the laptop. This is what I see. A future. A weapon. Alina looked at him, confused. The Thorn Foundation, Marcus explained, is bankrupt. Its assets are being liquidated by the federal government to pay his victims. Tomorrow, I am acquiring all of them for 10 cents on the dollar. The name will be dissolved. It will become the A.H. Foundation. Her initials, Alina Hayes, the name he had used for her. No, her real initials, Aluna. Her real surname was Harris. He knew. Its mission, he continued, will be to provide legal services, new identities, and financial aid to victims of men like Thorn, people who have been erased. It will be a ghost organization with very, very real teeth, and it will need someone to run it. Someone who understands its mission. Someone I can trust. She stared at the laptop, at this offer. It wasn't a cage. It wasn't protection. It was a job. It was a purpose. He wasn't just saving her. He was empowering her. He was giving her a sword. I don't know how to run a foundation, Marcus. I'm a musician. You were a musician, he corrected her, not unkindly. You are a woman who ran from the most powerful man in the city for 2 years and survived. You are a woman who walked into hell and came back with fire in her eyes. You will learn the business. I will teach you. She looked from the burned cello part to the new laptop, the end of one life, the beginning of another. Thorn saw you as a possession, Marcus said, his voice low. He was a fool. A possession is a thing. It can be broken. A person. A person has value he could never understand. He put his mark on you to show he owned you. He gestured to the laptop, to the new life he was offering. This, he said, this will be your mark on the world. A much, much deeper one. You will not be my weakness, Alina. You will be my new trident. She finally understood. He hadn't just saved her from a monster. He had seen the monster's mark and recognized a fellow survivor. He wasn't offering her safety. He was offering her revenge, served cold and legally, on a balance sheet. Alina looked at the man who had destroyed her enemy, crippled his rival, and was now offering her an empire. She reached out, and, instead of taking the laptop, she held out her hand. Marcus looked at it for a moment. Then his own hand met hers. It was not a romantic gesture. It was not a plea for help. It was a handshake, a deal, a partnership forged in fire and sealed in ice. I accept, Alina Harris said. And for the first time in the fortress of glass and steel, Marcus Bianco smiled. It was not a cold smile. It was a smile of recognition. The boss was no longer alone. They say the devil you know is better than the one you don't. But what if the devil you think you know, the city's most ruthless Mafia boss, turns out to be the only one who can save you from a legitimate monster? Marcus Bianco didn't just save Alina. He gave her justice. He didn't use bullets. He used the system. And he proved that the most terrifying man in the room isn't always the one who shouts the loudest.